Good morning. What a pleasure to be in Bremen. This congregation just means the world to my family. It's our fourth time to come and to be a part of this good church. In fact, in 2016, shortly after I developed this series of lessons, the Bremen eldership asked if we would come and we would provide these lessons for this church. At that time, we were not a school. I was still in full-time work. And we came and we delivered those lessons, and from that day forward, we've been traveling the nation giving these lessons from church to church. We go to about 45 congregations a year, and we deliver these lessons. In 2018, we became an official school. We developed a curriculum. We've gone back and we've updated and expanded, and now to be back at Bremen in this place where we really started is a blessing to us. So thank you for being here this morning. There are a few things I need you to do. Everybody get out their smartphone this morning. If you get your smartphone out just for a minute, there's a couple of things I need you to do. First, there's a QR code on the screen. And on that QR code, I need you to scan the QR code with your camera. And we're going to use this to go ahead and sign you up for evangelism training. We're going to send things to your email address. So it's going to give you a little link. And on that link, if you'll select it and put your name and email address, we'll send you evangelism training materials for free. We're going to do it every single week. And so every Wednesday and Friday and sometimes on Mondays, you're going to get material to help you develop your skill set to bring your family to Christ. Now, you'll notice it says subscribe. Go to your YouTube app. Go to your YouTube app. Click that YouTube app. Go to the house-to-house, heart-to-heart School of Evangelism and hit subscribe, because we're going to send you videos. They're 5-minute videos, and what they're designed to do is train the saved to teach the lost. That's the theme of this school. So we're trying to train the saved to reach the lost. In order to do that, we've got to provide you training materials, downloads, and videos. So those are two things that you can do, the QR code, and also you can subscribe to the YouTube app. Now, if you do not use QR codes, if you're looking at your phone trying to take a picture of that, you don't do QR codes. What we can do is we can provide you a clipboard, and we'll start doing that later this week. You can put your name and email address, and we'll make sure that's 6,000 years old. We've been doing it very well. So don't worry about the QR code. For those of you who don't do that, we'll get your name and email address a very different way. Again, it's wonderful to be here at Bremen. The Bible teaches us in Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 30, the fruit of the righteous is the tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise. There's not a wiser course of action for your eldership to take this morning than to focus on soul winning. This is the heart and soul of the church. And a church that does not focus and understand the Great Commission is a dying church. God teaches us from Genesis to Revelation that it's His love, that He wants us to share with others, and He wants His creation to love Him. And so we're going to have to teach that love. We're going to have to share that love with the people that live around us. What I need to do this morning is overcome some hurdles, and I know that this is the biggest hurdle I've got to overcome. And in my understanding of evangelism, the biggest obstacle we face in our churches sits in our pews. Brethren, it's us. We don't believe. We don't believe it works. And because of that obstacle, what we're going to have to do in this first lesson is try to overcome that. Because I know right now this morning, if you don't believe in evangelism, if you don't believe you can reach people in America, this is a wasted effort. This is not going to accomplish what the elders want. This is going to be just a time filler. So if this morning we're looking at a church that does not believe that America can be reached, this week is not going to work. I want to share with you why I'm here. I want to share with you some numbers. In the year 2000, there were 13,155 churches of Christ in America. In 2009, there were 12,629 churches. In 2015, there were 12,300 churches. In 2018, there were 11,965 churches. And in 2021, there were 11,905 churches. What does that tell you this morning? Well, it tells you that we're losing churches, that churches are shutting their door at an alarming rate. What we're finding is that congregations around this nation are declining to a point upon which they can't operate anymore. And in fact, we've been doing this now for 3-4 decades. We're finding that the Church of Christ is hemorrhaging church members. Let's look at membership. In the year 2000, we had 1,265,000 church members. In 2009, we had 1,224,000 church members. 2015, we had 1,180,000 church members. 2018, we had 1,128,000 church members. In 2021, 1,112,000 church members. Brethren, if these numbers continue as they are, we're going to find that it's going to be difficult to find a church of Christ. We're seeing drastic changes in our nation. And those changes are indicative of what we're seeing on the board behind us. That is, the religious population of our nation is in rapid decline. We are seeing the extinction of the Church of Christ in the United States of America. These numbers this morning ought to hollow us out. When we notice all around us that churches, they're struggling, they're losing membership, this is the issue of our day. If we don't address this as members of the church, if we ignore this, brethren, we will rule the day when we look around and there's not a church of Christ for our grandchildren to attend. I can't impress upon you this morning how important this message is going to be. I pray that this is transformational for Bremen, transformation for you individually. Now, I want you to look historically at where we've come from. 1906. In 1906, we had a membership in the Church of Christ of about 159,000. And when you put that into a ratio compared to the population of the nation, what that does is it gives you a ratio of about 1 to 535. That means for every 535 people, you had one member of the Church of Christ. And that was 1906. Now that ratio, notice what happened 40 years later. It declines to 1 to 207. So in 40 years, the Church of Christ shrunk that in half. We cut into that. There were now 682,000 members of the Lord's church. Now watch what happened 7 years later, 1953. Now there's 1 to 106. So you're walking across the Georgia plains and you come to 106 people, the Georgia mountains. You got one member of the Church of Christ. Watch what happens in the 1960s. We shrink that to 1 to 84. Brother, we were the fastest religious growing body in America. No one grew faster than the Church of Christ. We were evangelizing, we were converting people, and notice the membership of the church plateaus about the 1970s with 2.5 million members. 1 to every 84 members or people in this nation is a member of the Church of Christ. Brethren, no wonder God blessed America. This nation became great because the Church of Christ was great. We grew during World War I. We grew during the Great Depression. We grew during the Spanish flu. We grew during World War II. We grew during Korea, Vietnam, the feminist movement, the civil rights movement. We grew during every major upheaval this nation has faced. The church grew. Until now. Brethren, since that time, I want to share with you what's happened to the Church of Christ. We have done nothing but shed church members. Till today, we're about 1 to 295, and that's a generous number. Brethren, COVID is a lagging number. Because of that, we really don't know where we're at yet. By the end of this year, the numbers are going to come out, and I fear they're going to be frightening. Because what we have seen during COVID was the gutting of the Church of Christ. 50% of our churches lost a fourth of their membership, and some of them have yet to recover. And so what we are seeing right now, currently in our churches, this is where the stats are right now. We are closing a church building every 3 days in America. Every 3 days, a Church of Christ closes their doors. How long do you think you're going to last? How long do you think the church is going to be able to survive when every 3 days a Church of Christ has to close their doors? Not long. Brethren, you're looking at the extinction of the Church of Christ if we don't change. Brethren, we are losing this war. If you had a football coach for the University of Georgia that had a record like the Church of Christ, you'd fire him. You wouldn't let him survive. You'd never let him take the helm. If we would be half as excited about the Church of Christ as we are about the Georgia Bulldogs, or about the Alabama Crimson Tide, or about the Tennessee Volunteers, we just might grow. Brethren, these numbers this morning ought to get the attention to every person that breathes. If those numbers don't stir your spirit this morning, you're already 6 feet under. There's no life left in you. Because this is the calling of our time. For our young generation, this is your fight. You lose this fight, there's no church. There isn't anything we can do more important this morning than to focus our membership on the Great Commission. Brethren, I didn't make it the Great Commission. Jesus did. He said, "Go ye therefore and teach." Jesus said that. I didn't say it. He said, that's your mission. That's your purpose. Many of our churches have lost their purpose. They don't even know what their purpose is anymore. And because of that, we're losing. And sitting in our pews this morning are soldiers that are unequipped, they're ill-prepared, and they don't even know their mission. Brethren, by and large, when I visit churches of Christ, the greatest threat we have to evangelism is unbelief. Our members do not believe. Our people don't believe it works. Our people do not believe that you can succeed. And because of that, our people are hurting. Our churches are struggling. And our members they're willing to go to Jamaica. If I put a mission trip together to Scotland, you'd be all in. I said, we're going to go to Honduras. Count me in. We're going to Costa Rica. Put me on the plane. We're going to Bremen, Georgia, and we can't find them. We're more committed to go halfway around the world and spend thousands of dollars on plane tickets than to take the gospel of Christ to Bremen, Georgia. No wonder we're dying. Our members have seen failure for so long that many of them don't believe. Oh, Brother Whitacre, we know it works in India. Send them to India, Brother Whitacre. We'll baptize them by the boatloads. But let's not even try to do it in the United States of America. Brother, I want to tell you this morning while I'm here. I want to share with you an experience that changed my life and is the reason I stepped out of full-time work. I'm no longer in a pulpit. You ask me, where do I preach? I'm at Bremen, Georgia. Next Sunday, I'll be in Tupelo, Mississippi. The Sunday after that, I'll be in Springfield, Tennessee. The Sunday after that, I'll be in Salem, Virginia. You ask me, Brother Whitacre, where is your... I'm a member at the Glencoe Church, but I'm not there very often. When I saw these numbers, I knew something had to be done. And so in 2018, I stepped out of full-time work. I sold my wife's dream home, and we went on the road, and we've done nothing but travel and help churches reach their communities. I can't tell you how much I'm grateful to God to be with y'all this morning. Let me tell you why I made that decision. I was sitting in my office one day, and a man by the name of Chris Coyle called me. He's a preacher. I didn't know him. And when he called me, I picked up my phone. I said, hello. And he said, is this a preacher? And I said, yes, sir, it is. He said, my name's Chris Coyle. And I said, I'm Rob Whitacre. I preach for Willette. He says, well, I preach for Somerville. I said, okay. And I said, Chris, what can I do for you? He said, well, I've got this family, and they just moved here to Somerville. Her name is Scarlett. Her husband's name's William. He converted her. And she's been talking to her mom and dad, and she needs somebody to go do a Bible study with her parents. And I said, that's exciting. I said, you count me in. I said, where do they live? He says, just down the road from you. I said, I'm all in. I said, you just tell me, give me their address. Chris, by the way, Chris, what day is the study scheduled for? He said, well, we haven't exactly set the date yet, Rob. I said, that is not a problem. Morning, noon, or night, you can count on me. Chris, if it says Bible study, I'm all in. Whatever day, it doesn't matter to me what time. And I said, Chris, tell me more about the family. And right before we finished the phone call, I said, Chris, by the way, when did they request this study? He said, well, they haven't yet. And I said, Chris, I'm confused. I said, you want me to go do a Bible study with two people who've not asked for a Bible study? I said, how do you suppose I do that? He says, I'm really not sure that's your problem now, but I'll let Scarlett know that I talked to you. That was very unhelpful. I had no idea what I was going to do. I got two people, Jackie and Sheila. Well, I'm supposed to do a Bible study with them, brethren, and I have no idea how I'm going to do that. So I wrote their names on a piece of paper. I looked at it for a little while, and I had no clue how to get to them. So you know what I did? I crumpled it up, put it in the waste paper basket, and got back to the important things like folding church bulletins, things that really matter. You don't think I'm serious, do you? Brethren, you just see how long you last without a church bulletin. Skip a church bulletin for about 3 Sundays and see how long you keep your job. You know our preachers in the Church of Christ today can go 6 months and never have a Bible study and keep their job. You skip a church bulletin for 2 weeks, we'll fire you. I sat in my office and I finally put the bulletins out. I got in my truck and I'm going home. And as I got in my truck, I sat there and I said, Rob Whitacre, you can't throw 2 souls away. Get back in your office. And I walked back in my office and I took that piece of paper and I uncrunkled it and I put it on the desk and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, Jackie and Sheila, but I'm not throwing you away. And I went home. Sunday morning, I went through my routine, Bible class, sermon, nursing home, Sunday night sermon. Got in bed that night, I didn't sleep. All I could think about is Jackie and Sheila Birdwell, and I don't know what to do with them. I got to my office, I sat down, and guess what? They're staring at me. Jackie and Sheila Birdwell on that piece of paper, and I still don't know what to do. So I bowed my head and prayed, and I said, God, help me. I said, I got 2 people I'm supposed to do a Bible study with, and I don't even know how to reach them. And I prayed for courage. I prayed for a door of utterance. I just prayed because I don't know what to do. And when I finished my prayer, I felt a little better, but God's not going to snap His finger and just pop him into my office. I decided I'd prepare. I prepared for the study. So I opened my Bible and I asked myself this question. If I were to talk to Jackie and Sheila Birdwell, God, what do you want? And I went to the master evangelist. I went to the greatest evangelist who've ever lived. I said, Jesus, how did you do it? And I started in Matthew and I started walking through the Bible studies of Christ. And I'm looking for technique. I'm looking for what to say. I'm looking for strategy. I'm looking for, is there anything in the life of Christ as he met non-Christians that would help me? What can I learn from Jesus? And it was one of the most rewarding studies I've ever done in my life. Brethren, I learned things that I thought I knew evangelism. I'd never been further from it. And I started noticing patterns, and I'd write them down, and it was exciting because I could see that there were consistent things the Lord did, but I didn't do them. And I said, I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to do it differently. And then one afternoon, Jonathan Smith comes home from college. He walks into my office. He says, hey, Rob, I'm back from college. I got a job at the Clay County schools. He says, I met this young lady at the Carnes Church of Christ. Her name's Elizabeth. We're getting married. He's telling me all about it. His family and I were friends. He's moved back and he's feeling pretty good. And about that time, he said, now, Rob, he says, I got to go visit my best friend. I said, well, who's that? He said, Evan Birdwell. Wait a minute. Evan Birdwell. Isn't he related to Jackie and Sheila Birdwell? He said, yeah. He said, that's like my second set of parents. He said, Evan's my best friend. Rob, I grew up in that house. I said, Jonathan, take me with you. He said, take you with me? He said, why would you want to go? I said, I'll explain on the way. So we got in the car. He's going down the road. And I said, Jonathan, I said, let me tell you why I'm coming with you. He said, I got this phone call. And I'm supposed to convert Jackie and Sheila. I'm going to teach them the Bible. And I said, I need you to get me in the house. I said, can you get me in that house? He said, not a problem. I said, Jonathan, one more thing. Don't tell him I'm your preacher. He said, okay, I can do that. So he goes to the door and he knocks on it. They open it. Jonathan! Sheila wraps him up, hug. Jonathan! She just hugs. Jackie, Jonathan's home from college. And Jackie comes to the door and they're just hugging, and she looks over her shoulder and she says, Jonathan, who do you got with you there? And he said, oh, just a friend of mine, Rob. Well, any friend of Jonathan's a friend of mine. Come on in. Like any good Southern woman. She had sweet tea and chocolate chip cookies waiting. And we sat around the coffee table and we started eating and talking. Things are going pretty good. And then we came to the awkward moment. No one talks. They just stared at me. And she said, Jonathan, who'd you say that man was again? I said, let me formally introduce myself. My name is Rob Whitacre. And I'm the preacher for the Whitacre Church of Christ. And I think you have a lot of questions for me, Sheila and Jackie. Jackie, the preacher for the Church of Christ is in this house. And she looked over at me and I said, well, yes, ma'am. And she says, well, preacher, I sure do. And then she started to ask her questions like she had rehearsed them, one right after the other. I mean, just rolled them off her tongue. And I'm going to do something I've never done before, church. It goes against my instincts. I'm going to hold back. I'm not going to answer any questions she asks. I'm just going to let them go. I'm going to defer. That's the word. I'm going to defer every question she asks. And so I'm just going to let her ask, but I'm not answering. And so I'm very conversational. I'm not rude. I just roll her question around. I talk about the question, but I don't answer it. And I do this for a period of time. And after a few questions, she looks over to her husband and she says, Jackie, why won't that preacher answer my questions? She's got it. I'm not going to do it. And I said, well, Sheila, that's a pretty good observation. I said, I'm not a very good teller, but I'm an excellent shower. I said, if you'd like to open your Bible, I'd be glad to show you the end. She said, Jackie, I think he's trying to do a Bible study with us. I said, well, Sheila, you call it whatever you want to. I said, we're just going to read our Bible. Jackie, can we do a Bible study with the preacher for the Church of Christ? And he looked at his wife and he said, no, honey, I don't think it's ever wrong to study the Bible. And I said, what do you think? Well, she said, well, preacher, she said, I'll tell you what, I'll do this study with you. If it's a secret study, no one can know. Brethren, I've never done a secret study in my life, and I don't even know what that is. And I said, well, whatever you want to call it. I said, yes, ma'am. And I said, when can I come back? And she gave me the date. I went back to my family, and I told Nicole, I told Jared and Hannah, and I said, man, I got the study. I'm so excited. That's all I wanted was a Bible study, and I got it, and she's committed. And I went to the church, and this is when I think you need to open your book. Your Evangelism Simplified Guidebook. Everybody open it up. I want you to go to your last page, and I want you to write something down for me. It's in your notes section. I want you to get your pen out because we're going to make a lot of notes. I'm just going to introduce this concept in this class. I'm going to call it Congregational Evangelism. Let me say it again. Congregational Evangelism. So what I'm going to teach you this week is not personal evangelism. There's some good personal evangelists among us. That is not what I'm teaching. I'm teaching a concept called congregational evangelism. What I want to do is help the church learn how to reach out. I know we've got some really good soul winners among us, but I'm not here for you. See, I'm here for the church because I know that we can't put the church on your back. You can't carry the church. That's very obvious. The church isn't surviving, and we can't just rely upon one or two gunslingers in the church in order for the church to grow. We need your help. We need the help of every single church member, and I know that. And I'm at the Whitacre Church of Christ, and I looked at that church this morning, and I said, brethren, I need to talk to you this morning. I laid my Bible down, and I just looked at him. I said, brethren, I need your help. I said, the Church of Christ at Whitacre won't survive without you. And I can't carry your water for you. I can't do this by myself. And I said, in order for this church to grow, I need your help. I said, I'm going to start asking for your help. And we're going to start this morning with a couple that I'm studying with. And although I can't tell you their names, what I want you to do this morning is I want you to pray for me. I want you to pray for them. I want you to pray that we can bring them to the cross. And I said, we're going to develop a congregational model. I really don't know what it's going to look like. I said, we're going to develop it one piece at a time. I said, we're going to start with prayer. And I want to ask the men this morning to do something, because I know that there are men that are going to be leading the church in prayer. And I realize that there are certain things we always pray about. We never miss it. Like you're always going to pray, Lord, keep me safe. You'll never say a prayer without that. I want you to ask you something. I want you to ask the Lord to open a door of utterance for us. Help us reach the lost. In fact, it's not wrong for you to pray specifically for people. I want us to start praying for evangelism in this church. I want to pray that the church will grow. I want to pray that we can reach out and find the lost. I want you to pray for courage. I want you to pray that this church will be an evangelistic church. Can you help me? I know, men, I'm asking a lot, because a lot of us have these canned prayers we say when we walk up to the podium. We've been saying them for 30 years. You could say them in your sleep. I'm asking you to add something to your prayer. I'm asking you to pray for the lost. I'm asking you to pray for us. Let's change our ways, Chad. Let's change. Let's address it. Let's, as a church, let's focus on people that are lost and outside of Christ. And so I went back to that house. Jonathan and I pulled up down the driveway. I knocked on the door. She opened it up. Y'all come on in. We walked in, and she sat down around the table. I said, Jackie and Sheila, you got your Bibles? They said, yes. I said, I just so happen to have, let me see, these little booklets. I said, they're called Back to the Bible. They're really simple to use. And what I'd like to do is to spend a little time and answer some questions. All these verses or all these questions come right out of the Bible. We're just going to fill in the blank. And I said, the first one's in John 8:32. Can we look at it? And they opened their Bible. And then Sheila said, now wait just a minute, Rob. She says, you know I'm saved. I said, well, Sheila, I'm not your judge. I'm not here to determine that. I said, that's completely between you and God. We're just going to study the Bible. And she said, well, I need to tell you all about my religious experience. I said, okay, Sheila, tell me about it. So I got my pen out. I got my paper. I'm going to write it down. She said, Rob, it was a dark and stormy night. Oh, no. I said, okay, dark and stormy. I wrote it down, dark and stormy. She said, Rob, I was driving along the road. She said, the lightning was striking, the winds were blowing, the rain was falling. Rob, she said, I could barely see. And all of a sudden, Rob, the lightning struck the tree caught on fire. She said, Rob, it came over the road, and Rob, I couldn't see. And so I just closed my eyes, and all of a sudden, Jesus came down, and the Holy Spirit took over the car, moved me out of the way. You're laughing at me. You don't believe me, do you? You're like, I knew you preachers in the Church of Christ do not believe in the Holy Spirit. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I'm not laughing. And if that's what you said happened, I'm writing it down. And she said, that's exactly what happened, Rob. And I said, well, tell me more. And now all of a sudden pulled me out of the way, put me in a culvert. She said, Rob, I sat in my car and I didn't know what to do. And I got the shivers. And Jesus came into my heart and filled my spirit. And I was saved, Rob. I said, is there anything else you want to say? She said, yes. I went to the church and I told my pastor. I said, well, what did he say? He said, Sheila, you have had the religious experience and you must testify. And so I got before the church and testified, and they voted on me. It was unanimous. Sheila has been saved. And I said, Sheila, is there anything else you want to say? Yes, one more thing. She said, about 3 months later, we had a mass baptism and I participated. Is there anything else that you want to tell us? She said, nope, that about covers it. I said, okay. Sheila, would it be okay now if we read John 8:32? Yes, we can read now. I said, okay, read it for me. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And I said, Sheila, what sets you free? She said, the truth. I said, put it in the blank. And she wrote it down. And we started through our study. We go to John 17:17, John 4:24, John 14:23 through 26. And when you start walking through, and they're getting it. You can see their eyes beginning to open. You can, by the words that they're saying, they're growing in faith. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. That's what happens. And by the end of the study, Jackie looks at me and he said, now, Rob, he says, it's my turn now. I said, yes, sir. He says, Rob, do you know I'm the deacon at the local Oak Grove church? I said, well, Jackie, I said, I didn't know that, but you must be a good servant if you're a deacon. He said, Rob, I'm the treasurer. I said, you must be a good steward if you're a treasurer. You wouldn't be given the job of a steward if you weren't trustworthy. He said, Rob, I'm also the Bible class teacher. I said, well, Jackie, you must love the Bible, because you wouldn't be a Bible class teacher if you didn't love the Bible. He said, Rob, I need to admit something. I learned something in this study. I said, what'd you learn, Jackie Birdwell? He said, I didn't know the difference between the Old and New Testament. Rob, I did not know I was not under the 10 Commandments. And Sheila looked over to her husband. She smiled. She said, I didn't either. I said, would you guys like me to come back? And they said, yes. Rob, would you come on back? I said, I will. We made our appointment for the second study. So I walk in that house. We pull out the blue booklet and we start studying about the church. And once again, you can see by their questions. You can tell by their eyes and by their body language. They're absorbing it. In fact, Sheila looks over at Jackie and she says, Jackie, why aren't we taking the Lord's Supper on the first day of each week? They're getting it. I can't tell you how exciting it is when people get it. And we finished that study, and they both looked at each other and said, Rob, we want to learn more. I said, I'll be back next week. And I said, I want you to think about it. I want you to study it. We're going to be praying about this. And I went back to my family, and I could not have felt better. I looked at my wife. I said, they're getting it, honey. The Bible study's working. I said, we got this family, and they're coming to the cross. I went to the pulpit, and I said, church, keep praying. Pray harder. You don't know who this family is, but they're very influential. If I told the church who I was studying with, immediately they would say, you can't do this, Rob, it won't work. They're pillars in the community. They're never changing. Oh, it was good that I didn't mention the name, because I think if I would have said the name, they just stopped praying, because we don't believe. You can't convert families like this. You can't reach people like this, Rob. You're wasting your time. I pulled down the driveway, and as I was about to knock on the door, Jackie and Sheila finished a conversation that they shared with me later. Jackie said, Rob, I knew you were coming. I could see you a mile off. He said, and I looked at my wife and I said, Sheila, I said, you and I need to talk. Rob and Jonathan are coming over here. He thinks he's going to baptize us, but he's got another thing coming. He says, Sheila, he said, I've been a member of the Oak Grove Church all these years and I'm going to die here. Sheila looked at her husband. She said, whoa, Jackie, I'm glad you said that. She says, Mama's a member here, Grandmama's a member here, and so plays the piano, and I'm going to die here. That's the discussion that took place before I knocked on the door. Never underestimate the power of this book. Brethren, I walked into that house unknowingly. That conversation had taken place. I sat around the table and we passed out our booklets and we started. Jackie and Sheila are getting it. I see it in their eyes. And we're going from faith to repentance, confession, and we get to baptism. I've got a big problem. He gets it. He understands. His eyes filled with tears. He put his head down. He won't even look at me. His wife's head's down. She just shaking like this, and you know they got it. It's now or never. So I looked up at Jackie, and I said, Jackie, I normally keep studying, but you got it, you know. I said, Jackie, I just have one question for you. What are you going to do? He picked his head up, and he looked at me, and he looked at his wife. He said, Rob, Sheila and I know exactly what we need to do, and we're going to do it. Brother, I couldn't believe what I heard. I said, Jackie, this is great. Sheila couldn't believe what she heard. In fact, she looked at her husband, she made a fist, hit him in the gut, and said, you said we weren't going to do that. I'll never forget his words. He looked at his wife. He said, honey, we have no choice. It's what the Bible says. Oh, brethren, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I looked across, I said, let's go right now, Jackie. We got to go to the church building right now. He said, no, Rob, we can't do this right now. So I went into closing mode. Every preacher, Chad, has a closing mode. I went to those passages, almost thou persuadest me. And I read it. I went the same hour of the night. Life is a vapor. Today's the day of salvation. He wouldn't budge. And I finally just kind of said, Jackie, I don't get it. Jackie, you know you're lost. What are you waiting on? He looked at me and he said, Rob, I hold the bag. And I know you don't understand that, but I do. And I did not. I said, Jackie, what bag? I don't understand. He said, Rob, I'm the treasurer. He said, all the money for this church is in this house. He said, I got to give it back. Rob, I've got to resign. Rob, I need to repent. It doesn't take long for a 15-year-old boy to repent. It takes a lot longer for a 55-year-old man to do it. And he looked at me and says, Rob, you can come back to this house every day until I do it. We will do what I said. Don't worry, I did. Every day I went back to that house. And my wife and I introduced my wife and my family, my children. And I remember just specifically because Jackie said, there's a strawberry patch out there. You kids pick as many strawberries as you want. We had more strawberries than I knew what to do with. We went every day. I sat in that swing on their front porch. My wife and I would just swing. Jackie, is today the day? Not yet, Rob, but it's coming. It was a Wednesday night. I was standing in the back shape of the Whitacre Congregational. And I was talking to Sister Jill. She's one of the deacons' wives. And she looked up and she said, Rob. She said, Rob, look over there. And I looked. It's them. She said, Rob, that is Jackie and Sheila Birdwell. Do you know who that is, Rob? They're in this church building. I said, I do, Jill. She said, Rob, is that the couple? No, that can't be. Rob, is that the couple we've been praying about? The couple you've been talking about? And I said, it is. Oh, Rob. I can't believe it, Rob. I just don't believe this. And that's our problem. Do you believe? Do you? Do you believe it works? Because one of the biggest challenges we have right now in the Church of Christ is we don't believe. Our members don't believe. We're distracted by everything that has no eternal consequence or reward. No one cares what your ball game says. In eternity, no one's going to ask about your get-togethers. No one's going to ask about our civic clubs. No one's going to ask about your academic achievements. No one's going to ask about how many hours you worked. There's just one thing that matters. Brother Daniel's just one. That Wednesday night, the invitation song was sung. Jackie and Sheila got out of the pew and they walked forward. Brethren, there wasn't a dry eye in that whole church. I've never seen a church cry like that. I could barely ask for the confession. And we baptized him into Christ for the remission of their sins. 6 months later, he's in the pulpit during a Wednesday night invitation. Brethren, that one conversion changed my entire life. I will tell this story to the day I die, because without him, I wouldn't be here. Church, I came to beg. If I need to plead, I will. We got to change our ways. Keep your doctrine. Don't change it. But we've got to reach our Jackie and Sheilas. They're in your community. Chad doesn't know them, but you do. You go to school with them. You work with them. They're your neighbors. There are people just like that all over Bremen. And I promise you, this church, that you will never reach them if you're waiting on your preacher to do it for you. Because you can't. This seminar is about you. This seminar is about us. We got to learn how to reach the Jackie and Sheilas. Because once you do it once we reach one of them, let me share with you what happened to that church. We went from 220 to 230. We're in the middle of nowhere. How many of you have ever been to Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee? There is nothing in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee. You're 45 minutes from a grocery store. You're going to go from 230 to 240 to 250. Listen to this, 260, 270. You know how we grew? No one moves to Red Bowling Springs. This isn't Bremen. 280, 290, 300. You know how we did it? Evangelism. We went from one to another to another. In fact, we converted so many people that one of the local churches, after we converted so many of their members, came up and confessed something to me. He said, Rob, I didn't want to tell you this, but our preacher prays for you every day. He prays that God would defeat you. I said, defeat me? He said, because we're taking all the members. Because they're learning the truth. I want you to ignore the bells this morning, because I am. Brethren, we got some work to do. This is Evan Birdwell. This is their son. And it wasn't long after that baptism, and I looked at my wife. I said, we can't let this die. I said, because it will if we let it. I said, we need another one. And I'm thinking, who can we go? I said, his son, Evan. I said, Nicole, every time we do a new convert study, his son stops by. And so I said, Jackie, we need to do a Bible study with your son. He said, now, Rob, it won't work with Evan. Won't work? Well, of course it will. Now, Rob, Evan a little different, Rob. I said, Jackie, we're all different. And I said, we just need to do a Bible study with Evan. He said, now, Rob, Evan a little backward. I said, Jackie, we live in Macon County, Tennessee. We are all backwards out here. That's why we live here. I said, it will work with Evan. We just need to do a Bible study. And he said, Rob, it won't work. Sheila overheard the conversation. She walks up to me and she said, Jackie, you know our son needs a Bible study. Rob, get in there and do a Bible study with my son. Well, I chose to listen to Sheila. I went to do a Bible study. Except it didn't go well. Hey, Evan, would you like to do a Bible study? There's been a lot of changes in your life. Don't want to talk about it. Didn't work very well. So at that point, I decided I was going to make a target list. I'm going to talk to you about this list later, but I'm going to make a target list. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing down people's names, people that I know that I can reach. And when I put you on my list, I'm relentless. I never give up. Till the day he dies, I'm going to be right there. I'm just looking for an opportunity. Evan sat down during the new convert class we were doing with Jackie and Sheila at their house. He's listening to me. He's a real nice guy. And I noticed he's real intrigued about my airplane stories. And so I said, Evan, you ever been in an airplane before? He said, no. I said, would you like to? He said, yes. I said, what are you doing tomorrow? He said, I'm off. I said, drive out to the airport about 9 o'clock and I'll take you for a flight. Really? I said, yeah, I'll fly you around where you want to go. Dale Hall Lake. I said, I'll fly you there. He said, wow, Rob. He said, man, I'll be there. About 9 o'clock, he pulls into the airport. I do the pre-flight. We get taxi down to the runway. We take off. We climb her up to about 5,000 feet. Brother, you can baptize anybody at 5,000 feet. You just roll it over. No, that's not what we do. And in any case, we flew the airplane around a little bit, and we were out for about an hour and a half, and we came back and landed, and we're pulling into the ramp, and I said, Evan, today's your day. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm taking you out to eat my treat. Don't worry, Chad, there's only a Subway Preacher Special 2 for $4. And I said, I got it covered. And so we went to Subway. We sat down. Across the table is Evan. I got eye contact. I got him right where I want him. He's not going anywhere. Hey, Evan. I said, can I spend a few minutes and talk to you about Jesus? And he looked back at me and said, I don't want to talk about Jesus. Wow. That surprised me. And before I could say another word, he said, but Rob, when I'm ready, you'll be the first to know about it. I'm relentless. I never give up. And so I went to Bible camp a couple months later. I don't know about Bible camp, Chad. I know about y'all's Bible camp, and I know where y'all go to Bible camp. But where I go to Bible camp, there's no cell service. That's one of the rules about Bible camp. You can't get cell service. I did that day. It rang. I said, there's a bar. Hello. Rob, this is Amy. I have no idea who this is. I don't know Amy. Yes. Rob, I think I'm going to hell. Can you do a Bible study with me? Hell, Bible. Yes, hell. Who in the world's Amy? Yes, Bible. Yes, ma'am. Why are you going to hell? She said, well, Scarlett, Evan's sister, gave me this book called Muscle and a Shovel. I've read it, and I think I'm going to hell. I need a Bible study. I said, Amy, this is his girlfriend. This is Evan's girlfriend. Yes. I said, as soon as Nicole and I get home, we'll do the Bible. Good. She said, I got one condition. I said, what is it? Got to do the study with Evan too. I said, Amy, Evan doesn't want to do a Bible study. She says, I know that's your problem now. I said, okay. So I thought I'm not usually this quick, but I thought on my feet and I got it. I said, you know how Evan likes his mama's cooking? And we always do the new convert study after Sunday worship. I want you to talk to Sheila. I want you to tell her that we're going to do this study, and I need her to make Evan's favorite meal. And I said, I want to make sure that he knows that we're going to study with you. He'll stay, problem solved. She says, I like it. I said, all right, put it. So sure enough, we showed up at the house. We had the spaghetti dinner all laid out. Chocolate chip cookies, my favorite. And then we sat around the table. We're eating. And things are going well. We finished the dinner. I pulled out. I just so happened to have, let me see, these little booklets. And I said, Evan, would it be okay? Or Amy, we can get started. I ignored Evan. And I knew he's going to stay. I just knew he would stay. And so all of a sudden, we started the study. Evan looked down and says, nuh-uh. And he got up and he just walked right out of the house. He got to his car. He starts it up and he leaves. Amy's devastated. And she looks at Nicole and she just sobs. I don't understand why my boyfriend doesn't love the Lord. I mean, she's just torn to pieces, right? And so I looked at Amy after she finished crying. And I said, Amy, you know we need to do this study. I know, Mr. Rob. I said, let's go ahead and start John 8:32. And we did. We got through the first page. At the end of the first page, Evan pulls back up. He walks inside, sits down at that table. I tried to give him a Bible. He said, I don't want the Bible. We tried to give him the booklets. He said, I don't want the booklets. He said, but I do want to listen to you. By the end of the study, he's answering all the questions. He's coming to the cross. The next week, Nicole and I invited him over to the house. We had dinner. I handed him the Bible, the booklet. He took it, and we finished the study. We're this close. Brother, there's something you need to know about evangelism. The devil doesn't give them up easily. And he made an assault on this young couple, and I'm going to tell you what he did to them. I'm going to tell you on Tuesday. You got to come back Tuesday night. This is Ed Goolsby. And this says he's our neighbor across the street. The elder said, Rob, you have one rule here at this church. I said, what is it? Do not bother Ed Goolsby. We promised him the preacher wouldn't bother him. I said, don't bother Ed Goolsby. Got it. Glad my dog didn't know the rule. That's the day we baptized him. This is Charles and Mary and Barry Hunt. Barry's their son. We went to their door with house to house, heart to heart. When he opened the door and saw it, he screams into his house, they're finally here. And I said, who? He said, house to house, we've been waiting for you. We've read this for years. Y'all come on in. It's amazing what happens when you do a Bible study. We did a Bible study with all three of them. We baptized them. This is Ronnie Rhodes. He sat in our pews literally for decades. And I went to the elders and I said, brethren, I said, tell me, has anybody ever done a Bible study with Ronnie Rhodes? They said, no. I said, I'm going to do it. One of my elders looked at me and said, please don't, Rob, you'll run him off. I looked at that elder and as lovingly as I could, I said, brother, you don't get more lost than lost. He needs a Bible study. It's amazing what happens when you do Bible studies. When I got to Jacksonville Church of Christ, Alan Webster is preaching, and he looked at me and he said, hey, Rob, he says, I believe in what you're doing. He said, the Jacksonville Church does not. They don't know you. You'll have to prove it, Rob. I said, it won't be hard. I said, Alan, give me the name of the people that sit in your pews that are not Christians. He gave me 17 names. I started with name number 1. Alan actually took me out to the home of Jerry Conley and introduced me to him. And I got to know him. Then I took my wife out to the house, and she got to know him. I asked a very simple question to Jerry Conley. I said, Jerry, I said, what do you think about the Jacksonville Church of Christ? He said, I really like it, Rob. Nice people out there. He said, I like going with my wife. I said, Jerry, do you know a lot about the Jacksonville Church of Christ? He said, I really don't know a lot. He said, just what I hear. I said, would you like to know more about us? He said, I actually would. I said, I just so happen to have these little booklets. And we baptized him. We baptized 17 people in about a year and a half. They believe now. I have one more story to tell you, then we'll break for an intermission. When I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, I grew up in a ranch. I grew up with rattlesnakes, scorpions, caliche, and sticker bushes and cactus. And my dad worked for Delta Airlines. He got us a little ranch north of the city. He said, I want to raise my family in the country. And that's how I was raised. It was pretty remote. In fact, one day I went to my mother. I said, Mom, I need a friend. And she said, well, go make one. So I knew there was a boy that lived about a mile up the road, got off the bus before I did. And so I walked up the road a mile. And I knocked on his door. He opened it up, and it was Mel. I said, would you be my friend? He said, yes. That's called a Facebook friend request today. Back then, it worked very well. And that's how it worked. And we grew up fishing and hunting, and man, we just had the greatest time. But there's something about Mel that's different. Mel has crosses all over the house, statues of Mary. He goes to something called Mass. And I didn't understand any of it. And I went to my dad. I said, Dad, can you explain to me why Mel does all that? He said, oh, Rob, he's a part of this religion. I said, well, I want him to be a Christian, Dad. He said, well, son, you'll have to teach him. I didn't know how to teach him, but I did my best. And what I did is I would open my Bible from time to time, and I said, Mel, can we read our Bibles together? And he said, yeah, I like the Bible. So we'd read, and I learned some things as I read. I learned there's some things that Mel did that were very different than what we read in the Bible. One of them is in Acts 8. In Acts chapter 8, verses 35 through 39, you have the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch. And we'd read that, and one day I said, Mel, I said, y'all sprinkle babies, don't y'all? I said, yeah. I said, why in the Bible do they immerse believers? He said, I don't know. I said, can you show me somewhere in the Bible where they sprinkled the babies? He said, well, I know it's in there. I said, well, let me know when you find it. Brother, we were freshmen in high school when he started, the 8th grade, actually. I ask him every year. He said, what's in there somewhere? I'm going to ask my priest. And we keep doing these studies. He could never find it. Then he started to come to church with me. Then he goes to meetings with me and lectureships with me. And now we're studying the Bible pretty consistently. We're seniors in high school. Mel walked into my room one day. He looked at me. He was upset. I could tell. I said, Mel, you okay? He said, no, I'm not. He said, every time we do this Bible study, everything you believes in the Bible, Rob, nothing I believes in the Bible. I can't even find my church in the Bible. He said, Rob, I want to be a Christian. Will you help me? One of the greatest days of my life. I said, yes, Mel, what do you need me to do? He said, you know my dad, he's a little bit hard. I said, yeah. I said, I try to stay away from him, Mel. He uses 4-letter words. He does not like me. And Mel said, but Rob, I need your help. He said, Rob, I need you to help me explain this to my dad. Would you do a Bible study with my dad? And I said, well, sure. I said, I'd be glad to do one with your dad. I looked at my parents. I said, Mom and Dad, I'll be right back. I'm going to convert Mel's dad. This won't take long. I got to the house. We knocked on the door. He invited him in. He explained to his dad. He said, listen, Dad, Rob and I have been doing these Bible studies. His dad's a religious guy, but he's a different type of man. And anyway, we sat around the table. We opened our Bibles, and I went to Acts 8. I read it. I said, Mr. Hutzler, can you tell me why y'all sprinkle babies? And in the Bible, they baptized believers, immersed them. He looked at me. He looked at his Bible. He shut it. He says, I don't owe you an explanation. I said, no, sir, you don't. And I said, I was just curious. But Mel looked at his dad. He says, you owe me one. He said, Dad, I want to know why we believe what we believe. I've been asking. No one seems to be able to know. Why do we sprinkle babies? He said, we're not talking about this. He said, Dad, I want to talk about it. And I want to know why we do that. And his dad started to get irate. His dad's a very angry man. And his dad stood up and made a fist. He pounded it on the table. He said, I told you we're not going to talk about this anymore. He said, Dad, I've been waiting for years. I just want to know where in the Bible do we sprinkle babies? And his dad got very irate. Then he looked at me and said, stay away from my son. Don't ever come close to my son again. He said, get out of this house. I better never see you again. He got his wallet out of the backside of his pants pocket and he threw it at me like a fastball. He said, I told you, get out of my house. Then he came at me. I've never seen a man this angry in my life. Mel stepped in front of his dad and he looked at him and said, no, Dad, you're not going to do this to Rob. His dad's a violent man. Mel looked over his shoulder and he said, Rob, you need to leave the house. I need to talk to my dad. When I got back home, I remember crawling into the arms of my mother and I just bawled. I looked at my mom. I said, I just lost my best friend, Mom. She said, no, you haven't, son. I said, I did. That night at 9 o'clock, the doorbell rings. On the other side of the door, it's Mel Hutzler with 2 suitcases in his hand. He looked at my dad and Mel said, Mr. Whitacre, my dad says I can stay in my religion and live at home, but if I want to be a Christian, I have to leave. Mr. Whitacre, I choose to be a Christian and I have no place to live. My mother grabbed him and hugged him and said, son, as far as I'm concerned, this home is your home, that room is your room. You'll always have a place to live here. It was a few weeks later. Mel had not obeyed the gospel. My dad sat down and talked to him. He said, Mel, have you tried to make peace with your dad? And he said, no. He said, I think you need to go talk to him. Mel went over and talked to his dad, and his dad said, fine, if you want to be a Christian, go be it. You can even come home, but you got to do a Bible study with a Monsignor. I said, Mel, what's a Monsignor? He said, Rob, that's one level up from a priest. I said, that's wonderful. We're going to convert the whole church. I just know it. On the day of the study, I got the stomach flu. I said, Mel, reschedule. He says, I can't. My dad said, you're not allowed to come. I got to do it alone. I said, Mel, you can't go up and do a study with a priest. You can't do this. He said, why not? I got everything I need. He actually held his Bible up and showed it to me. He said, I've got everything I need right here. The day of the study, they drove over to that office where that priest was, and they sat around the table. Mel opens to Acts 8, 35 through 39. Mel reads Acts 8, 35 through 39. And he asks the priest this. He says, where in the Bible do we sprinkle babies? And the priest said, we're not here to study the Bible. And Mel said, that's the only reason I'm here. I want you to show me where in the Bible do we do this. And they kept going back and forth. And then Mel read it to him. And the priest grabs the Bible. Literally, he did this. He grabs the Bible, pulls it out of Mel's hands, closes the Bible, and he looks at him and says, son, I told you to stop reading that book. Those are his exact words. Mel picked up his Bible and said, Mr. Priest, as far as I'm concerned, this Bible study is over. He took his Bible and he left in the Northern Oaks Church of Christ in San Antonio, Texas, on a Sunday morning. That young man walked forward and confessed the name of Christ and was baptized for the remission of his sins. That picture that's taken with Mel and I is the graduation night at the Southwest School of Bible Studies in Austin, Texas. This picture was taken just a few years ago where Mel serves at the Northern Oaks Church of Christ as their preacher, and he just became one of their elders. Brethren, Jesus said, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, look on the fields, for they're white unto harvest. Brethren, they're white unto harvest in India, and we're baptizing people. They're white unto harvest in Africa, Tanzania, Costa Rica, Honduras, Panama, and we're baptizing people. They're white unto harvest in Jamaica, and we're baptizing people. Brethren, they're white unto harvest in Bremen, Georgia. Maybe the reason we're not baptizing people is because we're not teaching them. Thank you for your patience this morning. To God be the glory. I'm looking forward to worship.